Hello, I'm Sylvia Knight, Head of Education at the Royal Meteorological Society. In this series of short films, we're going to be covering some of the background information that teachers may find useful if they're teaching weather and climate at secondary level, and especially if they are using our weather and climate teaching guide with accompanying classroom resources, which can be found on our website MetLink or in the notes below. In this film, I'll be looking at weather in our lives. The weather affects just about every individual person every day of their lives, whether it's what we wear, what we eat, how we travel, or even how we feel. Similarly, it has an impact on almost every industry and leisure activity, even if only through the traffic conditions. In the UK, we are stereotyped for talking about the weather a lot, as our weather can be quite changeable, but is usually changing within relatively small parameters. It's rarely extremely cold or extremely hot. Our summer weather can be really quite similar to our winter weather. So when does normal weather become extreme weather? Extreme weather is usually defined as the most unusual weather, which is significantly different to average or normal conditions. It occurs less than 10% of the time, so extreme temperatures would be the 5% of coldest temperatures and 5% of warmest temperatures. Some other thresholds for extreme weather are hard to define, as they will vary from place to place and with the time of year. For precipitation, the definition of extreme could be based on impact, on return period. You may have heard phrases like a 1 in 100 year event, or on a percentage-based threshold, such as rainfall that occurs less than 5% of the time. The World Meteorological Association issues the formal definitions for extreme weather. So now let's consider the various weather variables in turn. When we talk about temperature, we usually mean the air temperature, measured out of direct sunlight in a well-ventilated place at 1.25 metres above the ground. Other measurements which are made as standard include the daily maximum temperature and the daily minimum temperature, and the soil temperature. The local atmospheric pressure is converted to sea level pressure by taking into account the height, the altitude of the place where the measurement was made. So for example, if the atmospheric pressure was measured at 1,000 hectopascals in Buxton, which is 300 metres above sea level, it would be about 1,035 hectopascals at sea level, and this is what would be shown on a pressure chart. So atmospheric pressure is measured in hectopascals, that's the SI unit, but 1 hectopascal is the same as 1 millibar, and that's the unit that you most often hear people using in conversation. Precipitation can include the daily rainfall total, the rainfall rate, or the snow depth. The wind speed and direction are officially measured at 10 metres height and well away from any obstacle. Measurements made with a handheld anemometer about 2 metres above the ground should be increased by a third to get the equivalent speed at 10 metres. The reported wind speed is the average wind speed, typically averaged over a 10-minute period, but gust speeds can be much higher and reflect a shorter-term wind speed. Wind direction is reported as a direction from which the wind is blowing. So a westerly wind is a wind blowing from the west to the east. When no instrument is available to measure wind speed, the Beaufort scale can be used instead. There are different versions of the scale depending on whether you're observing the impact of the wind at sea, where you can look at the waves, or on land when you can look at trees, smoke rising, and potentially structural damage. The absolute humidity is the amount of water vapour in the air, but we usually talk about relative humidity, which is the absolute humidity as a percentage of that required to saturate it. 100% relative humidity is saturated air. When the air is saturated, as much evaporation as condensation is occurring, and the rate of evaporation depends on the temperature and goes up as the air gets warmer. The relative humidity will decrease as the air warms, even if the absolute humidity, the actual mass of water vapour in the air, stays the same. Dew point is the temperature at which relative humidity is 100% and there is as much condensation going on as evaporation. So if the air is cooled to or below its dew point, cloud droplets will usually form, although that can be affected by whether the cloud droplets have something to form on. And we'll look at that in some more detail in the Water in the Atmosphere film. Fog reduces visibility to less than 1 kilometre. The definition of mist is less clear, but for aviation purposes in the UK, it refers to visibility of less than 5 kilometres. Cloud type reflects the altitude and the structure of the cloud. Cloud types include cumulus, stratus and cirrus clouds, and we'll consider them in more detail in the next film. Cloud base is the altitude above which cloud is found, and it marks the level at which the temperature of the air is at the dew point. Cloud cover reflects the proportion of the sky covered in cloud and is traditionally reported in octas, which are eighths. There are lots of useful sources of information about the weather, including websites which show you where it is currently raining, both locally and globally, current satellite images, lightning strikes, and other local and global weather, atmospheric and oceanic conditions. Some of my favourites include Earth.nullschool and the Blitz Ortung site for lightning. In the next film, we'll look at weather measurements.